right now. Hey, Andrew, how's it going?
I'm good, Dan. How are you, bud? Are we
Yes,
live?
yes, we are live. Hello, everybody. My name is Dan Durant. I'm the host of the Tech Lounge. Here we discuss topics related to business technology and cybersecurity, which is extremely important nowadays. I have here Andrew Summerton with me, my co-star, and my partner in crime. Hey, Andrew, how's it going?
I'm good, Dan. How are you? Good to see everybody. Kind to see everybody. Hopefully, lots of you joining us today. It's going to be a great topic, great show.
Yes, 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 and I see that Gladstone is playing around with the screens right now. That's all cool. All right, we got a great show for you today. Last week we talked about ransomware and how it is the now transformed into this industry, right? With affiliates and I'm talking about RAS, or the ransom as a service type of business model, right?
Yeah,
And today
absolutely.
we're going to talk about how to protect your company. And the thing is, Andrew, that I've seen a lot of information around on the web and different places, and there's a couple of things. The first one is that everything is so general. There's
Right.
like, okay, yeah, you're supposed to do backups, or you're supposed to do cybersecurity awareness training. Yeah, you're supposed to do this, right? But
Yeah.
the information is not very detailed, and they don't tell you why you need to do things,
Well, and if you
right?
don't know, if you're not in that space and you hear about it because you hear about it all the time, you're going to be overwhelmed and you're going to be confused, like you said, because it is very generic information. It's all specific
Yeah.
but generic in the same breath, unless you totally understand it and why you're doing it. So,
Yes.
I think it's really important that we narrow it down to make people understand the importance of how to do it, why to do it, and what needs to be
Yes.
done.
Narrowing it down, it's the key. And I think this presentation that I have is going to be more of a tutorial today, and they're going to give you some really good insights as to why we're doing the things that we're doing. And not only that, but really practical advice, especially at the very end. I have some really good tips that are going to help you quite a bit. So stick around, right? We have a full
Absolutely.
hour. If you have any questions and any comments, just make sure you post them down on the chat, whatever you are. And I see that we have quite a few people already saying hi and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
great to
And
have you around.
And guys, people who are joining us now and who have, we have quite a few people who follow us on a weekly basis, and really, really happy to have you here on a regular basis. But for those of you who are new, or you have questions that maybe we don't get to on the show, please don't hesitate to reach out to us afterwards. Send us emails, connect us with us on LinkedIn, call the company. We'd be happy to share our insights, share our information with you, or even help your IT team, your MSP, or yourselves, get better understanding of cybersecurity and your architecture, your landscape.
Exactly. Everything is different, and every network is completely different from each other, right? You don't have two networks that are the same. All right, so I am showing you my presentation right now, and let me just jump right into it. So
It's only, Dad, it's only really small. I think maybe we should make us small on the right hand side and make your presentation large.
yeah,
Yeah, reverse
Gladstone.
it. Gladstone's playing with some new buttons in there, I think. Sorry
Yes,
about this,
yes,
guys. We
yeah.
need to make ransomware big. There we go. There we go.
So last week we talked about this is from one of my presentations about what is ransomware. Some stats. I give you a little information about the kill chain and how it is. It generally ransomware attacks companies. The other thing is, like, we talked about the major RAS groups. We talked about the RAS model with the peddlers as well as the affiliates and all of that, and the entire thing from A to Z, from recruiting affiliates all the way to delivering the decryption key, the whole chain of command when it comes to ransomware. And today we're going to talk about how to protect your business, right? Which is the key. So I have 10 tips, right? And I'm going to be jumping from screen to screen to show you different software, different stuff that we use here at Rhino Cybersecurity, and also that you should consider in your environment as well.
Absolutely.
So the first one is, I'm going to go right into it.
Dan, you're
Uh,
just a heads up. You get some kind of background echo slash muffle on your microphone. So I don't know if it's something you can adjust, but you've got it a couple times so far in the last minute or two. Just an FYI.
okay. All right. I think maybe you're just hearing that. I
Okay,
don't
I'm
hear
just
it from my. So, guys, the first thing that you need to do is that you need to map your attack surface. Okay, and you have no idea how many times we go into a company and we are doing cybersecurity assessments, we're doing consulting, and we're providing recommendations, and we usually follow guidelines like the CIS, security controls, critical security controls, CSC, with 18 different controls, or the NIST, and things like that. And very first thing that they tell you everywhere is you cannot protect what you don't know you have,
Fair
right?
enough.
So you need to make a list of all your assets, like you're in, like spreadsheets. They don't count, man. We see a lot of spreadsheets because everything is changes, right? So and not just your assets in terms of endpoints and servers and network devices and all of that, but also your software, the software that people are using inside of the company. So it is very, very important that you map your attack surface, identify your systems, your software, your devices, and then maintain this active inventory of everything you have.
Dan, is there
In
a way for, just because we're trying to simplify things, for if let's say a company doesn't have an IT or an MSP or somebody, is there a trick to identify all of their systems, their network, etc., their endpoints?
Yes, yes, of course. And I'm going to show you something that we use here at Rhino Cybersecurity. So, if you can see my screen, this is Data RMM. So this is one of the tools that we use, and it goes beyond just cybersecurity. This is actual IT management stuff, right? So in here you can see, for example, one of our computers, and I'm showing you a demo computer in here, and we can see the level of detail that this RMM is, remote management and monitoring software, right?
Right.
So the way it works is basically it works through an agent that gets installed in all the systems, and then you're able to monitor everything inside of the company, right? So you see operating systems, you see the builds, you see the patch, whether the computers are patched or not. You see the different logs and stuff like that, like shutdowns and etc., as well as things like like the applications that you're running on those systems, right?
Right.
So and and the monitors, right? So this keeps and you can tell right away, Andrew, this beats an Excel sheet,
Oh,
doesn't
for
it?
sure. Absolutely. This actually tells you right down to, like, if your software's out of date or anything, right? It's on your computers, etc.
Exactly. So, for
Nice.
example, right here you can see the latest version of each of the softwares,
Beautiful.
and then you see whether it is compliant or not compliant,
And
right?
that's very
So
that's very important to have updated software when it comes to protect and stopping ransomware. All these things are layered protections, right? So um,
yes,
these tools are very, very important.
yeah, you have to keep the things updated, right? So and the main thing is, like, if your operating system is out of date, and you don't have your latest definitions, let's say from Defender or your antivirus, then what happens is that that's how you get the RCEs, the remote control, or the rats, for example, the remote access trojans inside of your computer, and you can get a hacker doing a CNC on your computer. However, lots of times when your applications are not up to date, they're old applications and they have updates, hackers can actually do a lot of the privilege escalation through those apps. It
Right.
is it is hard for a hacker, actually, by the way, to do privilege escalation. If
Okay.
your computer if your computer is up to date and all the apps are up to date, it's going to be nearly impossible for a hacker to do privilege escalation.
Hey, Dan,
And
question in regards to that, how frequent should a company verify this information, that their information, that their site, I mean, so that their computers, etc., are up to date? Should they do it, weekly, monthly,
yes,
quarterly? What's kind of a recommended tip?
yeah, well, it really depends on how you want to see, or you want to do it. Sometimes what happens is the updates, they break the systems, right? So some people say, okay, when once the patch comes out, we're not going to do the update for another 2 weeks or a week later, not right away, just because something might happen, and you might get systems that don't like the updates. right?
Okay.
But hopefully you'll do them if they're critical. It also depends on the security, the CVE, right? Like the CVSS, right? The ranking in terms of vulnerabilities, from 1 to 10. If it is a
Okay.
critical security, you should do it as soon as possible.
Gotcha.
If it's medium or low, then you can take your time, do it in 2 or 3 weeks, uh, depending on your cycle, right? So it really depends on the severity of the vulnerability.
Right.
However, through this is centralized, right? So you can use your GPO, so your group policy objects, or you can use something like Datto RMA to deploy patches and all of that stuff automatically, right? So
Okay.
you automate the whole thing. You don't need
Nice.
to get into other computers. So you can see here, for example, this is just how Datto RMM is also used for connecting through Splashtop into the computers, and you get graphs, you get all kinds of stuff that you can use in your company as well, right? So yeah, so that's super important to have in the company, right? So let me go back to the map your attack surface. So this is going to help you identify what's vulnerable, right? So as I said, hackers use privilege escalation through updated apps like Photoshop, like like things like that, right? Like
Right.
net.net, for example, or SQL Server. If they're out of date, they might be able to escalate. And why do they escalate? Why do they escalate the privileges? Do you know why?
Nope. Go ahead. You should fill me in.
of of course. So the reasons why they do that is because to turn off your firewall and the antivirus and disable the antivirus inside of a computer, you need to have admin privileges, right?
Right.
So once you get into the computer through an RCE, for example, or remote control, or a CNC, a command and control, then the hacker needs to escalate to turn off the security stuff that you have inside of the computer. If he's not able to escalate the privileges, he won't be able to move around the network. So that's
Gotcha.
where this is very, very important. All right. Any questions so far, Andrew, on the
I don't.
on the lines?
Just a lot of highs. Hello, guys. Happy Fridays. No actual questions yet. So yeah, guys, don't hesitate to ask some questions. This is really important. Maybe you guys are going through some issues in your office or your company that you want next steps, or what are we doing right now, and what we could do to better our position. Just ask the questions. That's what we're here for today. Please.
Yes, absolutely. So number two, I mean, we were talking about this, right? Patch and upgrade. And the thing is, a lot of people miss this step in terms of creating some regular maintenance schedule, which is kind of like the basic stuff, right? In IT, you need to make sure that centralizing, like your patch management, it is key, man. So you don't have to do it by yourself manually, right? You
Right.
can get this done every so often, every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, and but you have to have some sort of regular maintenance schedule,
Yeah.
right? That is key. Sometimes what happens is that you can't upgrade, right? So especially in servers that are running legacy software and stuff like that, it's really hard to upgrade those systems, or
Yeah.
impossible. You can't. So what do you do when that happens? You need to use controls. So some of the controls that we use, for example, is okay, closing all the ports, right, and leaving just the ports that are necessary open for the function for that server to be functioning, right? So if it's a web server, obviously, like port 443, for example, or if it's different types of servers, you need to just open one port or two ports, and that's it. Don't open the other ports. Don't leave them open, because then that is since that piece of equipment, that software is, or operating system is already vulnerable, you are limiting the attack surface,
Right.
right? The other thing is isolation, right? So make sure that those critical servers and things that are vulnerable, they're isolated from the network. So put them in a DMZ, for example, and limit the access to those. Zero trust is a great way or model also that you can use to isolate and take care of this stuff. And I have a document here, and this is from the NIST on zero trust
So trust.
architecture, right? So, and it is a very, very good document to go through to make sure that you can apply some really key zero trust um, um, like features, or you don't have to do it all at once. This takes time, by the
Mhm.
way. It's a lot of work. So like how to enhance identity governance, how to use microsegmentation. It is actually very, very detailed, and it's free, of course,
Right.
right? So things like that, I think, is super, super important to have. The other one is whitelisting, right? So whitelisting is super important because you don't want people to download TeamViewer or AnyDesk, or you don't want hackers to, once they get into the system, to be able to install software inside of a computer,
Right.
right? So whitelisting apps is very useful, right? So for example, there's a lot of ways that you can do that. And one of the ways that we use here at Rhino Cybersecurity is using, for example, Threat Locker, where you can create policies and allowed applications that users can have in their computers. But what this helps out with is that when a hacker, we're talking about ransomware today, right? So
Yeah.
when a hacker goes into the system, to be able to move from place to place, they usually install a remote desktop solution or software inside of the computer on the background, right?
Mhm.
So if they're not able to do that because you're blacklisting every single software except for what's allowed in the company, then they won't be able to do that, right? So they won't be able to transverse from one place to the other. So it is extremely important that you guys, are whitelisting. Whitelisting is a great, and it's also part of
Zero,
zero
zero trust.
trust. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, what do you think about that, Andrew? Do we have anything from anybody in there? If you
Yeah, we
guys
have
are tuning in.
we do have some questions and stuff like that. I mean, and it's all about escalation and as far as like you said, basically people having access. So by white labeling and things like that, it gives you that extra layer of protection. But again, it's all in stages, right? So the more information you have, the more things you do, it's going to basically give you that ability to basically mitigate any chances of being held ransom or having ransomware in your system. Here from Oscar, is there an alternative solution to TeamViewer? You can recommend one. Can you recommend one, please?
Yes, absolutely. So TeamViewers, it's a lot of people use TeamViewer. So we go into doing our cybersecurity consulting, for example, and a lot of people do use TeamViewer, and I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? You should
We just had
not
this
do that.
we just had this conversation with a client yesterday. Remember, Dan? You were like, we don't use. I'm like, okay, good.
Yeah, why are you using TeamViewer? Don't use it. The reason why I don't like TeamViewer, and I don't think any cybersecurity professional would like TeamViewer, is because you get, every time you create a session, you can give anybody the user ID and the password. So if somebody from abroad, you can give them the credentials and they can log into your computer and do a remote connection, right? And so the user is in control of what he or she wants to do. And do we want to put the user, the employee, on control of that kind of level of control? Of course, we don't want to do that, right? So anything that has to do, anything like AnyDesk. By the way, AnyDesk is one of the most used tools for ransom, right? So hackers use AnyDesk in a daily basis with different types of ransomware inside of the kill chain, right?
Right.
So things like TeamViewer, AnyDesk, LogMeIn, etc. You should not allow that at all. The way you should do it is through your RMM. As I show you, the RMM has a feature that uses splash top to be able to connect to the user. And when the IT personnel connects to the user, there is a little dialogue that the employee needs to click on OK to allow that connection from the IT personnel, right? But you don't. But in this case, the IT personnel has the control, not the user, right? So you're not giving the user control to do whatever they want. So I would definitely recommend. There's a lot of tools, like there's a Ninja RMM, there's SolarWinds, there's like a Datto RMM. All of those, they all come with the built-in remote connection for IT to be able to monitor and attend to those pesky tickets that get created because somebody's computer is low or whatever, right? So
Right.
I think that's a really good question, Oscar. Thank you for asking that, and I think that I hope that helps.
We do have a LinkedIn user. Basically, they said, if I see here, recording the session and I will watch later. Yeah, so just so you guys know, we definitely record these and we post them. So please,
Yes.
at any time, don't hesitate to go to our channel, go to Dan Duran,
Yeah,
etc.
you can go to
Go ahead.
GetCyber on YouTube
GetCyber.
and
Yep.
subscribe, and then we have all of our videos already recorded in there, so you can watch them backtrack. The last week's podcast is really interesting because we went into the dark web looking at how hackers do ransomware nowadays.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right, so let's get back in business. So let me just
Do
go
you want to
back
do
to
another
the
question, or do you
screen.
want to go to number 3 or 4, whichever? I figure we're on.
Yeah,
I think we're on
sure. If
4.
if we have
Another
any questions,
question?
then go
Do
ahead.
we have
Yeah.
a question from Boris? I think maybe Gladstone. Is that a? I'm not sure if.
Okay, Catherine says how to recover from a ransomware attack. Oh, yeah, that's that's not an easy task, right? So
No, for sure.
all of what we're doing right now is to preparing you for recovering from a ransomware attack, right? So if you put all of this in place, even if you get ransomware, you're going to be able to recover, right? So if you apply um, these different advice that I'm giving you right now, right? So
Dan, and a big thing too is, I mean, it's kind of a backwards question too in a lot of ways, because unfortunately, a lot of people think reactive and not proactive. And what you want to do in your business now and moving forward is being proactive with putting measures in place to mitigate any opportunity or any chance of being held ransom with ransomware, right? So how to recover from ransomware, it's a great question, but really the question should be, how do I mitigate any chance of being held ransom? Because it's really about being proactive moving forward. It's not if I'm going to be hacked or if I'm going to be phished or if I'm going to be held in a certain way. It's when nowadays. And so it's not about recovery anymore, even though it's important. You have to have if you have these measures in place and it does happen, to Dan's point, you're going to have a much better chance of having that recovery happen. But it's about being proactive so you mitigate the chance of it ever happening. This is what's really important.
Exactly. Right on. So so let me just go back to my screen here. There you go. All right. So for some reason this thing is operating for me today. All right. So the next one is okay, the other one is protect your domain controller. It's important because that's how ransomware happens. The hackers are trying to pivot from place to place. They do privilege escalation inside of the endpoint, and then they pivot from system to system to servers until they get to your domain controller. And that's what they want to do. In order to ransomware the company and do a systematic encryption of all the data across your organization, they need to take control of your domain controller so they can deploy the ransomware everywhere. If they do not have access to a domain controller, then they're going to be limited on what they do. So you need to protect your domain controller. Make sure that you have, dual factor authentication. Make sure you have, you're not sharing passwords or have the same passwords in different systems. Only one password on your domain controller. I think that will help you quite a bit. The next one is, if you talk about the things like updating your security system. Sometimes you forget, you keep your operating systems and all the endpoints updated, but you forget about all the security like devices and features that you have, like your secure email gateway, your web filtering, your application whitelist. You need to keep your security systems up to date as well, right? So the of course, and I'm going beyond the strong password and MFA. Everybody says multi-factor authentication and all of that. But threat intelligence, it's also very important. And let me show you another presentation that I have in here. And I think my audio is not cooperating with me today, so my apologies on that. Can you hear me, Andrew?
If I can, yeah. Yeah,
Okay, perfect.
it is going in and out a little bit, but very random. We hear you 90%, 95% of the time, so it's just a couple little times, and it's just a little muffly, but it's okay.
Yeah. So this presentation is part of our MDR, right? And let's suppose this is your network. So you have your endpoints, and you usually have, your app control, your app whitelisting, your extended detection and response, your endpoint detection and response, antivirus. Same with your email. You have your secure email gateways, your anti-spam, and all of that. You have your DNS filtering, and at the end, you're doing your cybersecurity awareness training and all of that stuff. And then you have your firewall, right? So let me show you how ransomware happens. What happens is that once you get an infection through a Trojan or something inside of a computer, then you get what's called a command and control. Okay. And this is where the hacker, through that virus, is able to talk to the mothership, right? So the big bot, the net bot, or like the hacker entity that is out there, a server out there, right?
Yeah.
So what happens in here is that once that is established inside of the network, for the firewall to be able to catch this is extremely hard.
Very hard.
Extremely hard, right? So that's when you get the privilege escalation. You have the pivoting from place to place and moving inside of the network. It takes 287 days, right, to be able to find this kind of stuff inside a network when a system is compromised.
And that's just and that's the market standard, guys. 200 days to identify a vulnerability within your network potentially, and it's isolating and escalating, as Dan alluded to, and pivoting, and 87 days to basically isolate, mitigate, and enumerate, basically, or get rid of it. What's nice about an MDR like we have, like Rhino, it's a 20-minute, it's almost real-time identification. So it's really important to make sure the tools. It's about layered security, right? And so, not to take away what you're saying, Dan, but I think it's really people understand the importance of having a tool like an MDR in their network.
Yeah. Every time we do our demos for our MDR, people are just they're floored on how fast we're able to detect CNC attacks, how we're able to detect downloads of malware inside of the network. And you're right, it's like 20 minutes. So if you want a demo, make sure you reach out to us, and we'll be happy to give you a demo of what we do as network security experts, right? So yeah. So something that I want you to pay attention to: look at the command and control right now, right? And what happens if you sever this connection? Then even if the client or the endpoint does have a virus, the hacker won't be able to talk to it, right? So the virus is the means for the hacker to connect to the computer, right? And to be able to command and control the computer. But if you cut this, you sever this line of communication, what you're doing is you're leaving a virus dormant inside of the computer, which cannot do anything because the hacker does not have control over it. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And this is where the concept of threat intelligence comes in. Okay, so for some reason my mouse is just dying right now. Give it a second. So there you go. Okay, there you go. Perfect. So threat intelligence there's a lot of resources out there that use threat intelligence. And just to give you a couple of them, we have here Proofpoint. Right? Proofpoint has a threat intelligence feed. Same with the SecureWorks. So you can see here, SecureWorks has another feed, and like you have Alien Vault with another feed, and you have Abuse CH has another feed, and so on. There's a lot of them there, and most of them are open source. So if your firewall has an IPS, so an intrusion protection system that blacklists IPs that are bad, that it makes sense to feed this information to your firewall, so it blocks, hundreds
Competition.
of thousands of IP addresses that are bad, right? Right off the bat, right off the bat. And these feeds, they are constantly being updated every day. They're being updated.
Yeah.
So that means that even if the computer gets hacked, when the hacker tries to establish that connection to the mothership, that IP address from the mothership is already blacklisted, so they
So
can't do
you can't
anything.
talk. Yeah.
They can't talk. They can't communicate. What do you think about this tip, man? This is so. A lot of people don't think about this, but it's so important
Absolutely.
for
It's
cybersecurity.
yeah.
It, it's one of those things that, and by the way, if you go to a URL house, um, I can see all the IP addresses and all the websites that are currently have malware, right? So don't go to don't go to
Don't
this
go to
site.
the
Don't click on this link, because then you're gonna download, an executable into your machine, right? So as a cybersecurity professional, what I do is I do go here with my Linux box, and I download all the viruses and then test antivirus against those viruses. I run, like 100 viruses against one machine, or 1,000 viruses against one machine, to see how long the machine is going to take for the machine to explode
So
using
and just so you
whatever
know,
antivirus.
when Dan does that, it's like a kid in the candy store. They love to be able to do that kind of stuff. So if you don't have the expertise, to Dan's point, don't be doing it. Please hire or bring on an expert to guide you and share those things and those directions with you. But again, it's just basically about understanding, having the right things in place, and hiring the right people to basically help you.
Yeah, and today's the 29th of July, and you can see here, for example, the dates. I mean, like, this is today, right? Today, this is the latest URL that was
Okay.
identified to contain malware, and it goes on and on and on, right? These are all online and active. And then if you look at, for example, you see different types of malware. So this is an executable. This is the Hajime, so it's part of a ransomware attack. Same with the Mirai is actually a botnet attack for creating zombies on Linux devices, and so on. So Mozi you have in there too, which is the same thing. DDoS bots, Tesla, and so on, right? So this is crazy, man. You can go here and if you click on one of these links, of course it's going to take you to another page, for example, but then it will tell you here what it is in download, malware download, right? And it will give you the hash, right, for it, and it gives you can copy, and then I can click in here and then just right now it's actually it's not working, right? So it's offline now, right? But I have a Mac here, so an executable is not going to do anything to my computer. So yeah, this is super crazy, man. So feeds are very important. That's what we use in our MDR also, right? Like, for part of our network intrusion detection system inside of the network, we consume all of these feeds, ingest these feeds to be able to track bad stuff inside of the network. All right. Any questions?
There's a couple. Actually, we've got some from Boris. I think we have some from Adrian. I'm not sure. Gladstone, feel free to put whatever one you want up. From Diego, small business owners don't have to worry about ransomware attacks, right? Oh, you know what? I love that, because I think it's a little bit what's the politically correct way of saying it? No, you're absolutely wrong. Small businesses and medium-sized businesses actually are much more prone to be attacked nowadays, actually, Diego. So it's definitely something that it needs to be on everybody's radar. And again, it's about mitigating risk, understanding the measures to put in place, finding out what you have in your network or what you have in your organization, and then asking an expert or your IT. If they don't know, ask them to ask a cybersecurity organization like Rhino or another one like us to give you guidance to help mitigate. Again, you're never going to eliminate 100% a risk. Never going to happen. But you mitigate risk by putting all the right measures in place. And that's what this is all about, right? Is understanding that. So to answer your question, small business owners, medium business owners, and very large businesses are all at risk. You have to
Yeah,
do things right to protect yourself.
it's harder to get into bigger organizations because it
Yeah,
needs the hackers need an entire team to be able to do that and lots of time to be able to transfer from like endpoint to endpoint and all that. It takes quite a bit of effort from there, but from the efforts also come the rewards, right? So the rewards are millions of dollars in ransom demands, right? But when you have a small company, for example, they might hold your ransom for a few, like $10,000, right? Like 20,000, $40,000, right? And that will hurt any small business.
100%.
And they will do it because it's easier to
Easy.
get into the security of small businesses than large organizations. And to collect $10,000 for, like half a day of work or one day of work in a small organization, it is a win-win, not a win-win, it's a win-loss for the hacker, right?
For
So
sure. Well, that goes back to last week's show, right, Dan? Where ransomware as a service. I mean, there's a lot more people attacking small and mid-sized businesses because they can, because they don't have to write the code, they don't have to do all the work. They can actually go out and get this. Then they can put in the ransom attack. Then they can basically held the small to medium-sized company ransom, get the payout where they share with their back-end supplier. And again, there's much more chances that a small or mid-sized business is going to be attacked because they don't have the measures in place like a large company does.
yes, yes. All right, next one, number 4. And people say, okay, you know what? Educate employees, cybersecurity awareness training, and there's so much, fuzz about this, and how it's so important. But what are the key elements of cybersecurity awareness training? Are you going to shove the
Yeah.
training down employees' throats?
Yeah. You're going to
Like,
scare them. Like,
that doesn't work, man. It
no.
doesn't work. So HR should be very, very. It should be part of the cybersecurity awareness training, right? You should have, like buy-in from the leadership in your company, or else it's never going to work, right? So positive reinforcement goes a long way when it comes to cybersecurity awareness training. I know of some companies where they have a 3-strike process where one strike, two strike, three strike, and then you're fired type of stuff. That is not good, man. It's not conducive to a culture of security, right?
Yeah.
So you need to have, like simulation games, for example. You need to have this roster or leaderboard where people can get awards for completing their cybersecurity awareness training, certificates, badges, and things like that, and make it part of your company, culture, as opposed to something that is external.
And not a all at once type of scenario. I think it's a slow drip process to build that cybersecurity culture is critical too. It's
Yeah.
slow and steady, basically understanding, not creating and instilling fear in your employees, but instilling knowledge so they have the confidence to know what to be looking for and what to be looking out for and to help protect themselves and what not to be doing and what to be doing and when to bring it to their IT attention, etc. And again, I think that only comes with building that culture and not building that fear.
Yes. So cybersecurity awareness training, it's about building a culture of security. Okay. And to be able to build any culture, right, a rich culture inside of an organization is not a 100-meter sprint. It is a
That's right.
marathon. So it takes a year. It takes a year or two to be able to get to the level where you want to, where you want to get, right?
Yeah.
And of course, Rhino Cybersecurity here, if you go to our page on the cybersecurity awareness training, we do have our services that are exactly that. We have drip campaigns, like our videos that we have from our content providers are extremely good. They're kind of value shocking,
Yeah.
right? And it's like 1 minute, 2 minute videos that you're presented to the user or to the employee, and it's not like death by PowerPoint,
That's right.
right? So they're much simpler, and they get to the point, right? So on what we do. So check us out. We
Absolutely.
have that type of service for you as well, right? So and moving on. So number 5, you got to segment your network. So any questions in there?
I think we have a few, but I think we're okay at this point. I mean, nothing that I don't think we've answered that I can see. Or wait a second, Oscar. Will a VPN protect you from getting hacked in case I need to use TeamViewer?
No. Okay, so I think what Oscar is what he means is, what is the danger of TeamViewer? The danger of TeamViewers is not the connection. The connection is encrypted, end-to-end encryption. If you have VPN, even better, right? Uh, but that's not the danger. The danger is to allow the employee to have TeamViewer in his computer, because he can remote into, or he can give access to anybody in the world to get into it. So that's the danger, right? In itself, TeamViewer is not, it's not a dangerous tool, but used by an employee, or misused by an employee, becomes a uh,
A risk.
a dangerous tool. And he's asking, in case I need to use TeamViewer. So how are you going to use the TeamViewer? Are you going to troubleshoot a computer? So remote into a computer and troubleshoot it because you're an IT professional, or are you going to remote to see your desktop and work remotely from home? If it's the latter, then you should not be using TeamViewer, right? You should be using VPN
VPN.
and then RDP. So you can connect through RDP to the computer. You need to first initiate your VPN session and then connect to RDP. I think that's the most secure method. And then delete TeamViewer. Forget about TeamViewer. Don't use it. And then if you have, for example, an RMM with Splashtop, as I said before, you can use Splashtop for remotely connecting and troubleshooting computers. I hope
And
that
this is
helps.
just, and yeah, I hope so. That's just a recommendation. Nothing against TeamViewer. Again, there's no problem there directly. It's the user itself that's maybe potentially misusing it. So just so we're
Yes.
clear on that.
Exactly. Then the next one is, we have another question in here. Do most companies that are targeted for ransom?
Oh,
Oh,
it went away. Do most companies that are targeted for ransom attack end up paying? Are they alternatively also other
alternatives to
alternatives to
paying.
paying? Sorry, it's a little here.
Everybody says, the FBI, the CIA, RCMP, all of them say do not pay the hackers because you never know. You
Can you
can't
get
deal
everything
with them.
back
They
or
have no code of ethics, right?
right?
But sometimes, if your manufacturing business, for example, is crippled and you can function for a month or two because of the hackers, you're going to go down there. You're going to go down. Your company's going to go down. You're going to go bankrupt, right? So at the end, you need to negotiate that ransom and you need to pay it, right? So
And
what
there
are
are,
the
Dan, to that point, there are professional companies that all they do is specialize in ransomware negotiations. So if
exactly?
you're ever in that position, make sure that you hire an organization that at least
Yes.
has that expertise. Very
and
important.
and I have that in one of these
Oh,
slides too.
perfect.
It's
Perfect.
super important. So, but the main thing is, what are the alternatives? Um, Backups, and I'm going to talk about backups and
Yeah.
key features on backups that you need to have in order to be able to bring everything back to some sort of normalcy, right? So, and the alternatives are pretty cool. So, if you stick around, you'll see some of the alternatives that are really, really, really cool. Okay, so isolate your intellectual property, right? So have those servers that contain intellectual property isolated from the rest of the network. You need to sequester personal identifying information, PII, right? So any data pertaining to users, your employees, and your clients and your vendors and all of that, you need to have that very well protected, and make sure you maintain critical emergency services. And this is part of what he's asking. What are some of the alternatives if a ransomware happens? You want to make sure that you have alternative emergency service running. You know what I mean? So that way, at least your servers are running. You have like a failover server or redundancy in your server that you can bring back online to at least get you by on that case of emergency, right? So because it is an emergency, right? When you get hacked, you don't want the lights to go off when you are ransom, right? When you get ransomware, you want to have at least the critical emergency service running, right? So you need to isolate those things. And the next one is secure extended network. So always remember that the network does not end inside
Dan,
of your
you're not
company.
sharing your screen, but oh, there it is. Perfect. It's up now. Perfect.
Yes. So you always have to remember that your network is not just your company. Your company, there's an extension to your company. So like we're talking about your operational technology. So all your machinery that you have inside of the plant shop, those need to be secure. And you might say, you know what? Why? If it's just firmware, like layer 2, basically, it's hard to get into it if a hacker does, and then if they do, you still need to maintain that because hackers do pivot from place to place. Your cloud environment is not part of your network. I mean, you're using Salesforce, you're using, other ERPs or CRMs or whatever. They need to be secure too, with double factor authentication, for example, dual factor authentication or backups of the data. If those services go away, you're going to be left with no data. So branch offices. So sometimes what happens, we go into helping businesses. We're only helping like the main office, but how about all these satellite offices that you have
Exactly.
around, right?
Yep.
So those need to be protected too. Even if it's 6 people, 10 people in those offices, they need to be protected, right?
100%.
And we have cases where our clients do have satellites office and branch offices. Your customers, your partners, your vendors, right? So a lot of the attacks, the phishing attacks, for example, come from vendors.
Yeah.
Maybe you can tell us a story around that, Andrew, on vendor attacks.
Oh, we just had one not too long ago. One of our clients, basically, they sent an attack to one of their partners who was a supply chain, and we actually mitigated it, identified it because we were fortunate. We have a Rhino Guard in their network, and then we told our clients, which isolated the situation. We immediately shut it down. Then they actually had to go to their supplier and tell them, by the way, you guys have been hacked. And we're not even affiliated with that third party company. We're affiliated with our partner company. So, fortunately, our client was protected, and then they had to go in and they had to identify and fix it, etc. That we weren't a part of. But yeah, I mean, it happens all the time.
Yeah, things like, for example, um, chain of custody, right? So it's very important. So when accounts payable, for example, is making decisions into who they're paying, they should have a body system where they can check who they're paying money to and do their due process.
Yeah,
And for example, if a vendor gets hacked and then they send you a contract, right? Because and it's the hacker send you the contract, you know that the email is coming from Peter, right? You
that's
know
right.
Peter,
You
you
know
dealt
them.
with
Yeah.
him, right? You have his email address, everything looks legit, and then you're going to pay money. Make sure you have that verification and process, or else you're going to be losing. You can lose millions of dollars,
Well,
right?
and it's so important because we have clients all the time that say, "Oh, we're so busy, we don't have time for this. We're so busy, we don't have time for this. We need to, and so we take care of it." But the reality of it, by having these measures in place, like Dan's alluding to, it's critical. There was a client, I mean, not a client, a company that, and I won't mention any names, but it was a company in Kitchener Waterloo that got held, that actually lost $2.6 million a few years back because they were doing major renovations in their building, and their supplier, so the hacker got in, realized there was suppliers coming in and out of this company constantly. Money was being exchanged on a regular basis, and then they just kept getting invoices, and this took almost a year to take $2.6 million out of their network because they kept paying the wrong suppliers, because of this, and it was just because they didn't have the proper measures in place. And it can happen. So you need to have these things, in place to protect you and your companies, and again, your network of organizations that you do business with.
Yes. We have a question here, I think, from Gladstone. What is the largest known ransom that was ever paid? I have no idea. So
Yeah, me neither.
if you can
I'm
answer
sure
that
no one
question.
knows.
um, I'm trying to remember. I think I've read that, but like I'm not really good with those type of tidbits. I'm more good. I'm better with technical stuff and remember commands and scripts and stuff like that
But
than
there's some really big ones, and to that point, cybersecurity is another really big part of this, and cybersecurity has changed dramatically over the last couple of years because of the big payouts, because companies aren't putting the right measures in place. They're not even giving 50 million plus, and this is third party information, so don't quote me 100%, but companies that have 50 million plus, it's very, very difficult a year. very difficult getting cybersecurity insurance. 25 to 50 million, they have to prove all these certain services. And under 25 million, you have to have things in place now to get cybersecurity insurance just to protect yourself. So it's very critical, and because they're
Yes.
paying out these large ransomwares, Gladstone, to your point. And I don't know what the largest is in history, but I'm sure it's quite large.
Yes, yes, for sure. All right, so let's go to the next one, number 7. So, number 7. So we only have 10 minutes. Oh my gosh, time flies, man.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and here, this is to Boris' question: what are the alternatives? Isolating your recovery systems, right? So not just creating regular data and system backups, but having isolated systems. So in we as a cybersecurity company, we do a lot of penetration testing and vulnerability assessments, and we're able to identify backups inside of the network, right? And creep up into cloud backups, for example. And we found for that in one case, I remember the backups were great. They were doing backups, they were encrypted, they were doing all of that through a virtual machine, so a VM, but we still had access to delete the VM, not the backups, the entire VM. We could delete the VM, and then the client will have no backups. And that's what hackers do, right? So you can probably hear my dogs upstairs. Excuse me.
It's
So
okay. We're
the,
all used to that in the background noise
yes,
in podcasts.
no problem. So the thing is, hackers want to delete that information. So as soon as the hacker is able to exfiltrate data from different sources, your servers, what they want to do is delete all shadow copies and all backups from the network, because they know that those backups are probably encrypted anyway. So it's no use for them, but it is very useful for you. But they will delete them, so they're gone, poof, into
Yeah.
oblivion, right? So you need to make sure that those backs are isolated, and through like a strong password when you get into the cloud backups, and make sure that, especially the ones that require full system recovery, right? Because those are the backups that are going to take you a week to be able to restore, because there's so much information in those type of backups, right? So make sure you scan your backups, right? So for vulnerabilities, because if you're going up the stream or upstream into the cloud backup, if a hacker can get into the cloud and delete backups from the cloud, then what's the use of a cloud backup? It doesn't make any sense. So have different backups running at all times, and make sure that you test the recovery process on those backups. So play the drills, right? Like play the restore drills, because sometimes what happens is, yes, you have backups, you get ransomware, you're trying to bring those backups back and restore them, and all of a sudden there is a major failure on those backups. You can't restore the data anyways, right? So super important in there.
Here's a question. It's kind of I'm not really sure. Maybe you can answer this, Dan. But what is the link between ransomware and cryptocurrencies?
Well, no, the link is that hackers, they're not going to send you a bank account for you to deposit money
That's what
into
he's
their
meaning. Perfect. That's what he's meaning. Okay, I was trying to figure out what is he asking in the. You're exactly right. Why? Because they can't track it. That's the thing,
Yeah.
right? That's exactly why. So when a ransomware asks for money, they're not going to ask for $10,000 to be deposited in bank, down the street from where your office is. They're going to ask for a cryptocurrency because, again, cryptocurrency is non-traceable.
Send me a check. Right?
Exactly. Please send me a check made out to my name.
No, they're never gonna do that. They're gonna send you a token, right? A cryptocurrency token, and you can deposit into this purse, and then because it's completely untrackable, untraceable, right?
Exactly.
You can trace it where they're coming from, like if it's from China or from Russia, but that's it. That's all as far as you can get, right? So
exactly.
Very, very good question in there.
Yeah.
So the next one is, and I was just talking about run recovery drills. It's not just about having a backup, but you have to do this quarterly or semi-annually. Make sure that your chain of command is in place, and if something doesn't work, establish a lessons learned. Right. So have a document of lessons learned. Why did it fail? What were the weakest points? Why did we take 2 weeks instead of 3 days? Those are all things that you can learn from your process and better it as you advance, right?
For
So
sure.
lessons learned is super important.
Good point. Yeah.
Make sure that you document everything, right? The next one is something that you were talking about, Andrew. So you have to leverage on outside experts.
For sure.
Don't take matters into your own hands when it comes to cybersecurity, unless you know what you're doing, right? So have a managed detection and response team. Uh, for example, we provide our 24/7 SOC for all of our clients through our MDR, right, and our network intrusion detection systems. You're not going. What are you going to do at 3 in the morning? Sleep, right? So you need to have people, with the eyes peeled on the dash to be able to kind of go through that. Are you going to do penetration tests and vulnerability assessments as well? Probably not, right? So you need to trust the experts that do that, and of course, we do that as well.
And I think really to get that out there, Dan, too, just to reiterate that it's not as expensive as you may think, right? Cybersecurity awareness, cybersecurity training, cybersecurity like MDRs, penetration vulnerabilities, penetration tests. Yes, is a little bit more of an intrusive expense, a little bit larger expense. It's a lot more engaging, a lot more time. But as an organization, small, medium, or large, cybersecurity should be customized, and solutions should be made custom to your
Yes.
organization. There shouldn't be a one size fit all scenario. So
Yeah.
definitely be educated and meet clients and companies like ourselves or other companies that are going to give you cost effective solutions to help protect you. Because again, it's
Yes.
not about breaking you to protect you, it's about making it affordable to be protected. That's the
Yeah.
reality of it.
And you know what? It's funny you say that in terms of value and money that you're going to be paying. So, for example, you can see in here that I have the website. This is our website. Um, and if I go down the page on our homepage, you can see the vulnerability scanning, $699. I mean, any company can afford a vulnerability scan, at least.
Yeah,
I'm not talking about cybersecurity or a complete assessment. I'm not talking about pen test, which could be $6,000, $7,000. Even though $7,000, $8,000 is not as that much of it's not hundreds of thousands, right? But 699, that's where you can start with, right? $700 for a vulnerability scan. So
and
to
it's
your
very
point,
thorough. It gives you a lot of information, so it's a great place to start. So if you want to really just understand where you are, it's a great place to start. And again, there's lots of
yeah,
companies out there, and again, we do that for you as well. So please
yeah.
reach out if you're interested.
Here's a very important one: get cyber insurance.
Absolutely.
We have really great partners for cybersecurity insurance as well.
For
So
sure.
if you have any questions on cybersecurity insurance, you can come to us, and we'll give you some good pointers on what you need to do to obtain insurance. It's becoming harder and harder to be insured nowadays,
For sure.
right?
It
We
says
have
if
a
a company, so just if a company needs cybersecurity insurance, can Rhino help meet to requirements in order to get approved? I have heard it's difficult to get insured. Actually, you know what? The reality of it is, we basically provide services that help cybersecurity companies, providers, um, decide if they're insurable or not. But we're a third party entity. So cybersecurity insurance companies and cybersecurity insurance brokers take care of all that. They will ask us what they're looking for, and then we'll provide or perform certain solutions that will help give them the tools or the ability to make a conscious decision if that company is assurable or not, or if they're putting the right things in place. So to
Yes.
answer your question and to answer what Dan's saying is, everything's third party. We're not involved in the cybersecurity insurance, but we help cybersecurity companies or individuals or brokers perform services that are required to get insurance.
Yes, exactly. And we have great partners for cybersecurity insurance
Absolutely,
as
absolutely.
well.
Yeah,
And the last one, the number 10, pay attention to the events that are surrounding you. Okay, so the I have a couple of sites that I usually go to every morning. So, for example, this one here, the Hacker News, gives
mhm,
you a really good articles on what's going on in the world of cybersecurity. Here, for example, Threat Post. I also go to Threat Post quite a bit to look around in terms of what is going on. So if you see that are critical security updates to Windows 10 and 11 because of a really really nasty security vulnerability that was found, you're gonna be in the know, and then you're gonna know what to do next, right? So
Exactly.
it is super important to have this kind of stuff, and be able to read. And sometimes what you can do also, and especially when it comes to cybersecurity awareness training, you want to make sure that your employees are reading constantly articles and things like that. We have
I was going to say,
our
do are you going to
newsletter.
perfect?
Yes, so we have our newsletter, and you can see, for example, protect your home while on vacation, right? This is very important, not just inside of the company for employees, but also in their everyday life. You can see, for example, why shadow IT is so dangerous, for example. So just letting people know that they should not take things into their own hands when it comes to IT, using free VPNs, and then some news on, for example, how home routers are targeted. We have a great subscription based newsletter, absolutely free, that you sign up to, and we'll send it to you twice a month, right? So it's
And Dan,
but
how can they register for that? Where can they go to register for that?
yeah, sure. You can actually go to the our website, so rhino.io, and when you are inside of our newsroom, then you can sign up here, right?
Perfect.
And we also have articles every day, 4 times a week, right? Articles on cybersecurity. So the last one was awareness versus resilience, closing the gap, right, on cybersecurity awareness training things. It's very very complete, by the way. So
And it's
yes,
absolutely free out there, guys, to join and enjoy that information, right? I mean, what's nice about that is we provide that content to educate our not only our partners, but anybody out there who's very interested and concerned about cybersecurity. And again, if you start following our Purple Talk newsletter, you're going to get informed, you're going to learn a lot more. And if there's anything else you need, then obviously then you can reach out to us for anything else. But
yes.
absolutely free.
And that's the end of the show, guys. I
It
know
is.
it was a little dry and dull today, but you know what? I think the lessons were there, and that's the key. We want to make sure that you guys are safe in your role as an IT security, or like as a business leader, that you are protected, right? So I hope you found this information useful for you and your company, and I hope you guys have fun. Next week we're not available. We our podcast is going to be canceled next week, but come back
Following week.
the week after.
Absolutely.
Right?
Looking forward to it. Dan. Again, great show, great job, and incredible information. Very, very well done. Very nice to see everybody.
Thanks,
And thanks,
guys.
thanks for the
Appreciate.
questions.
Bye. Hello, and we're still live because my mouse just died right when I was gonna. There
Did
you
it?
go.
Are we live?